want to take some time to talk about the KRK ROKIT 5 Studio Monitors. KRK is an audio company that produces speakers and audio interface components in addition to, more recently, headphones, specifically for studio use. Studio monitors are generally designed to be very flat in response and more balanced so that you get the more authentic picture of what your sound or your mix sounds like, so that when boosted in somebody's car or on their stereo, it still has a very crisp and defined status. KRK historically have been considered very sharp, and sometimes people call them tinny. They don't have quite the bass response usually that a Mackie speaker or sometimes even Yamaha speakers will have. A lot of gear nerds with audio will get really opinionated when it comes to the speakers that they have, and I did a lot of research before I purchased these. So far, about 3 years in, 4 years, gosh, it might have been 5 years so far. I've really enjoyed them. I've used them only for two things: for casual listening right before a mix and for mixing proper. I don't use them for my casual listening outside of mixing, and I don't use them for any other audio purposes such as listening to podcasts or the radio. They are specifically hooked up to my mixing system so that I can have an accurate, clear, detailed response to what my mix should sound like. This is the 5. They come in a 4, a 5, and a 9, I believe, or maybe it's an 8. I know that I have a friend who got the larger sized ones, and the bass response on those is reviewed to be a lot better and more balanced, but I have had no problem with the particular speaker and tweeter setup that this one has. KRK designs their speakers with a cavity beneath the main speaker and an exposed, non-grilled speaker with the standard rubber gusseting on the outside. The carbon-covered cone provides a little bit of protection, but is mostly for beautiful show, and then a soft, gummy kind of plastic tweeter on the outside. On the back, it has a lot of different connection components. I'll remove this one so that you can see a little better. It comes with a balanced RCA, or an unbalanced RCA, and then a balanced 1/4 inch and XLR inputs, as well as the power supply and the obviously on and off power switch. In addition to the connections on the back, there are volume boosters and level adjust. Now, because these are powered speakers, they don't connect to an amplifier to get their sound. All of the conversion from digital to analog, or rather from electricity to sound, happens internally instead of being amplified through a separate device. So they're powered here, and there is a way to tune them using the Onboard Mechanics. So because they are not amplified from a separate source, you have to add volume for them here. I typically leave mine at 0 dB. I think a lot of people would use different volume settings for different speakers if they were in a room that had more of a response on the left or the right side, so they could have a more even, more controlled response. Historically, I have also played with the high frequency level adjust a lot. Right now I have it set simply to just above 0 dB. It is really fine tunable. They tick into place pretty easily, and the reason that this exists is in some rooms that will be a little darker in tone and less reflective, you'll want to boost the high frequency a little bit. But in some areas, and especially as a criticism of general KRK systems, sometimes the room doesn't respond the way you want it to, or the speakers themselves are a little tinny. So you'll attenuate this just a little bit by 1 or 2 dB to try to get the sound that's the flattest. the most equally balanced sound that you can get. With most of the rooms that I've had, I typically have to boost it because of the reflection, so I would put it up to this way. But in my current room, I've actually left it at 0 and had no problems. Using an unbalanced output has been reasonably successful for me, just as successful as the balanced ones. I typically like to use the TRS because I have the most 1/4-inch cables balanced laying around for my studio, but I think a lot of mixers tend to use XLR or RCA because of their outboards. Luckily, KRK provides all kinds of those different setups for anybody's needs. They are actually one of the more versatile in that respect. I've seen a lot of setups that are just this, or setups that are just this, and more frequently I'm starting to see this sort of breakdown, but at the time, in 2012 or 2013, I didn't see anything like that. Now these are purchased individually, their own set, and they're not purchased as pairs. One thing that's great about that is that if one ever were to go out, you could replace just the one. One thing that is also good is that KRK sells systems that allow you to hook up speakers to a single spot, kind of a receiver, but it distributes it so that you can use these as tweeters, and you can buy yourself a subwoofer by KRK specifically for the bass response. One thing you can also do is use those connectors to build surround sound systems. So when you buy these as the per, you can have a 5.1 surround sound system with all KRK 5s, or you can get Rokit 8s, or any of the other different types of KRK speakers. I have been more than satisfied with just the stereo setup. I've mixed maybe 7 or 8 albums with this setup, and I've had great success doing so. It came down for me to budget and for compactability. I've been able to pick these up and grab them. This is my entire mixing setup. I've been able to carry this around with me as a portable mixing studio and production studio for many years with minimal issues with regards to being able to fit them where I need them to go. Another good feature to talk about is on the bottoms of these, there is a padded, let's see if you can see that, a rubberized pad. What's great about that is that to get the best response, mixing speakers need to have a separation from their base. Oftentimes you'll see that accomplished with tall, maybe 4 or 5 foot tall bases that have foam, thick-inch foam underneath the speakers themselves that reach all the way to the floor. That way it separates from whatever desk that you're working on for any rattling. The small amount of rubberized padding underneath them has actually provided me with just enough stabilizing, like rumble-free sound output, and I think that was a really clever design choice on KRK's part. It provides a lot of grip on top of this very smooth surface, and it also does some sound dampening for issues if it were ever to rumble being just plastic on top of plastic. Or maybe, I think this is actually a wood, and then this is the plastic. The quality of the construction, these are, for what I imagined they would be, a lot heavier than I thought, which a lot of the internals, it's a powered speaker, to me lends itself an air of credibility compared to a lot of the junk speakers you'll see on stereos. I think that these would be great for casual use as well as mixing use, despite my proclivity to just use whatever is laying near me for my casual use. I feel like I underutilize these in that regard because whenever I have used them for mixing reference, they've been excellent and very rich in their sound without ever exaggerating any of the frequencies. KRK made a solid product here. I strongly recommend that you try them out.